Well, I came across the principles in 2014. It was interesting because I had been going through some changes in my life around that time. I had just finished a fairly lengthy therapeutic process with a counselor in 2012, and I had spent 2013 kind of feeling pretty good, and then I started to not feel so great. I had been dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder for a number of years, basically from the age of 22 until, well, at that time I was 52, so a long time. And so I had finished that therapy and had been doing okay, and then I started to have some symptoms coming back. So I was feeling a little bit distressed by it. And I made what seemed like a logical choice at the time, but right now it seems kind of silly, which is I thought, I know, I'll go to coach training school. Like maybe I can use this experience somehow to help other people. So I think it was a good impulse, but the training that I started was kind of not sitting well with me. I felt like I wasn't really helping people because we were required to start coaching people right away as part of the training, and I just didn't feel like I was really doing any real good for them. So I was kind of like, oh, what do I do? Do I stay in this? You know, I'd already plunked down quite a bit of money, and I thought, I don't know what to do. And one day I was online, and I was actually looking for a software platform that I thought I could use in my coaching practice. And I came across a video by someone named Nicola Bird, who has a business that sells this software. And in a totally random place on her website, she had a video talking about the Inside Out Revolution, the book. And so I just started watching this video, and I had no idea what she was talking about. It sounded kind of like Greek. I didn't really get it. But she was so forceful in a good way about what she had seen. I thought, well, I should probably just go read this book. I mean, I've read everything else. What else have I got to do with my time except look for some other solution? And so I went and bought the book right away. I listened to the audio version on my walks around New York City, and very quickly realized that that's what was missing for me. It was a very powerful experience. I couldn't even tell you what exactly I heard at first, but there was some truth that I heard in Michael's voice as he was reading the book in my ear. And I just kept listening and then I bought the paperback and the Kindle version. I just was kind of immersing myself in it. And I very quickly canceled my coach training because I said that's not right. What they're teaching is, you know, they're well-intentioned, but it's not right. And I just kind of dropped everything and started talking to people about this because I started to feel different, and I wasn't doing anything to feel different. I just was seeing something in a very new way.
So it would be really great to have a bit of an insight into your background with the post-traumatic stress, because it would just be great to sort of get a sense of what happened to you, what things were like, and then the flip side of how you are now.
So I unfortunately married the wrong person, as they say, when I was quite young. I was 22 when I got married. And unfortunately, I didn't have any clue before we got married that there was anything amiss. Everything seemed fine. He was very smart. He was just a slight bit older than me, just a couple years older. He already had a successful business that he'd started, and everything was good. And then on the very first day, he sexually assaulted me, actually in the hotel room on our wedding night, as we were getting ready to go on our honeymoon the next day. And I kind of went into shock because I kept sort of trying to figure out if what had happened had really happened, because it was so abhorrent that I couldn't even quite get myself to say what had happened. And I just kind of went into survival mode, I think, from that point on. I really didn't know how to deal with him after that, so I just spent the next 7 years that I was in that relationship trying to figure out if I was doing something that was causing this, or I really didn't understand. You know, I had never been around that kind of behavior before, had no exposure to violence in my life prior to that, and I just didn't understand what was happening. And eventually, it got to the point where it was very obvious to me that if I didn't leave, it was likely that I could end up dead. And I made a very quick decision one day to get out. By that point, we had a daughter who was 2 years old, and I had seen her getting scared by his behavior, and that was enough to wake me up a little bit to the fact that I needed to get out. So I eventually left when I was 29, and unfortunately that wasn't the end of it. I thought that it would be, but it wasn't, and in a lot of ways the abuse continued. Unfortunately, my daughter was involved, and I didn't really know the extent of it for quite a long time until she was about 11. And finally, when I was in my early 40s, a judge finally decided that we didn't have to have any more contact with him. So it was basically 20 years of kind of long-term abuse.
So it's kind of interesting talking with you now, because the way you talk about it is, it kind of feels in a very resourceful kind of way, and I would imagine for a lot of women who've been through something like this, there would be a lot of pain attached to it. So how do you attribute the way that you are reflecting on what was a very horrible, I would imagine, frightening time in your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was scary, and I felt afraid pretty much at some point every day, up until I found these 3 principles, which sounds crazy to me when I say that, because it's like, what are these, some kind of magic beans or something, you know? But in a way, they sort of felt like a magic wand had been waved over my experience, where I started to just see it in a very different light. I started to see that even though those events occurred, it had nothing to do with me, first of all, and it didn't do anything to actually hurt me. And I walked around for all that time thinking that something was wrong with me. You know, I'd been labeled, I'd seen so many different professionals, and I'd been labeled as having post-traumatic stress disorder, and, you know, it's not very fun to be labeled having a mental illness, because it's got a stigma attached to it, and it feels like it's permanent. And I just started to see that that wasn't true at all, and that the only thing that had ever been a factor in my experience of all of that was my own thinking. And I had just been listening to a lot of sort of trauma-induced thinking and giving it a lot of attention. And once I saw that that's what was happening, it was very easy for me to kind of not do that anymore. And I didn't really have any trouble seeing it for what it was. You know, I tried lots of different methods before that to try to manage my thinking and control it, and that just didn't work. But once I saw that was what was actually creating my experience every single day, and that there wasn't anything wrong with me to fix, the combination of those two things was pretty miraculous and powerful for me.
So I would imagine for some people they find that quite hard to understand, because it might sound that you're saying that it was almost your fault, or you've absolved somebody who did something wrong of what they did. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. It's more that It's a little bit hard to explain because also in this process I started to see him differently. I walked around with a lot of anger and a lot of hatred, actually. I mean, I spent a lot of years wishing he would just fall off the face of the earth, thinking that that would make me feel better. And when I started to see what these principles were revealing to me, it was very clear that in the same way that I was creating my own pain after all of that was over, he was creating that for himself, and he was trying to cure it in some way by controlling me and hurting our child and doing all the other things he was doing. And once I saw that dynamic, it wasn't that it absolved him of any of his behavior or said it was okay, but it explained it. It finally explained it, because I could never explain it before. I was like, how could you hurt someone that you just married? How could you hurt your own child? And then I finally saw, okay, he's been listening to whatever thinking he's got going on, not able to separate that from what's real or what have you. So that was a big piece of it for me, was finally understanding what drove his behavior, and then seeing the responsibility I had just by, not in a bad way, and in fact in a beautiful way, that I had been creating this experience for myself, and I just didn't have to do that anymore. And I didn't need anything to happen to him. I didn't need to try to go back and erase the past. It just felt like, I don't want to say it felt like it was all okay, but in a way that's how it was. I saw that whole experience very differently from that point on.
So I know that you want to reach out and help other people, other women who've been through similar circumstances, and you offer coaching. So tell me a little bit about, if somebody is interested or they know someone that they think, gosh, it would be lovely if they could connect with you. What is it that you're offering? How can people connect with you?
So over the past couple of years since I found the principles, I've been basically telling everyone who would listen to me about them. So I've talked to a lot of different people in all walks of life, and I've just recently realized that, you know, this audience, women especially who have gone through some kind of trauma, might really be helped by hearing from me and hearing my experience. So, you know, I offer free calls for people. If they want to get in touch with me, they can visit me online and just fill out a contact form or email me. And, you know, I'm happy to have a conversation with them and see if they want to go forward and working with me one-on-one. And I just recently had sort of this dream of offering some really nice retreats in some kind of beautiful place for women who are dealing with this, and maybe we could have a few days together and transform. Because I really don't think it has to take long. I mean, for me, you know, I had spent all those decades trying to fix myself, and it really was just a matter of a few days when I started to feel differently, and within a few weeks I didn't have any more symptoms of PTSD that I've been dealing with every single day of my life. So I know it can happen quickly.
And one of the things that I understand that you talked about there is that in the past you were looking for what was wrong.
Yes.
And my sense is now that it's flipped that. So what do you see for maybe women who come forward now who think that there's something wrong, they need healing? Mm-hmm. What is it that you offer and see in them?
Yeah, I used to think that. I used to think that there was something wrong with me that needed to be fixed, that I did need to be healed in some way. And now I look at myself and other people and other women as people who don't need to be healed. They just need to see that they're not broken. And if they can see that they're not broken, that changes everything, because we all have this beautiful gift of innate mental health, and nothing about that needs to be fixed.
Mary, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today in this very busy cafe, restaurant. thank you so much for your time. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome.